So we're going to be doing a direct composite veneer prep on tooth number 9, and the specifications in your instructions for the lab today tell you to reduce it 0.5 millimeter everywhere. However, the enamel at the top is about 1 millimeter thick, so if we reduce half, we'll reduce half the enamel. But the enamel gets thinner here, so I'm actually going to be reducing it a little bit under 0.5 millimeter at this end because I don't want to go through the enamel. Okay, and can we put the RPMs at 100,000 RPM? Okay, so normally when I start, I like to make groove cuts, and I'm going to go down about half the diameter of the burr. Except when I get down here, I'm going to go a little bit less. You just have to detect the margin with your burr. So I'm going to make 3 guide cuts here. This one looks a little deep. Make one more over here. And I'm going to stay above where I want my eventual margin to be, because we're going to adjust that margin. We can adjust it later. Now, when I go to reduce the facial, don't hold the burr parallel with your guide cuts, because every time you drop into the guide cut, you'll make it deeper. So when you're reducing, you want to come in at a bit of an angle here, so you're not making it any deeper. When you get to the bottom of the guide cut, you'll be at the correct depth. So always come in at a bit of an angle here. How does it look, Catherine? Does it look all right?
Yes, it looks great.
You'll notice that when I'm holding the handpiece, I usually double rest it. I'm holding it in my right hand, but I might take a finger of my left hand and steady the handpiece so that I get much more precision that way. I get about twice as much precision by double resting the head of the handpiece. And you can usually do that on anterior teeth. It's much harder to do it on the posterior, but I do it whenever I can. Now, if you notice the prep so far, it's kind of a parabolic shape, and the margins are feather margins at this point, but we're going to define them more precisely. Okay, so I think we have close to enough facial reduction. And we're going to start working on the interproximals. So to get to the interproximal, I'm going to be dropping down a little bit on the mesial here. And I'm going to broaden the margin in the interproximal to hide it. If the margin is here, you're going to see it when the patient smiles. So you're going to have to bring it over a little bit on the distal and a little bit on the mesial. And I'm dropping down in. I'm creating actually a little trough. And we're going to end up with a bit of a J margin right here where the burr, because the burr is round, it has a circular diameter, and it's going to leave a little bit of a ski jump or J margin here, and that can be taken off with a mesial margin trimmer or distal margin trimmer on this side over here. So anyway, we've created this. And I'm widening the margin here. And we're going to do the same on the distal side. I'm dropping down into the interproximal just to the contact area. Now if this tooth had a previous composite filling, you probably will want to have replaced it so that there's no open margins on it, or you can try to fill it in when you're doing this facial composite. So I'm dropping down till I'm approaching the contact area. And it's no longer parabolic shaped. It's almost like a cross between a rectangle and an ellipse here. And if you want to, you can lower your margins here. And when I'm actually doing this on a patient, I'll use a slightly wider burr because that way it will rest, a larger in diameter right at the tip, because that way it'll rest on the tooth without slipping down into the gingiva. We can do it with this small diameter burr, but it takes a lot more control. Okay. So we're essentially done, except for taking your margin trimmer and trimming off this J or ski jump margin interproximally. Did I miss anything? All right, so we're essentially done. Just have to trim up the mesial and the distal with the margin trimmer, and you should just barely detect the edge with your Explorer here. All right, thank you very much. That should do it.